serial killers particularly will have a script.
Israel Keys breaks all the rules that we normally associate with serial killers.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really.
Samantha Koenig was Israel Keys' last known victim.
On the evening of February 1st, 2012, 18-year-old Samantha was finishing her shift at the Common Grounds coffee stand in downtown Anchorage, Alaska, when she was approached by a man wearing a ski mask. The strange man ordered coffee, but when Samantha handed it to him, he suddenly pulled out a gun and demanded that she gives him all the money. The terrified teenager quickly complied, thinking that this was just a normal robbery and the man would soon go away. Little did she know that her nightmare was just getting started. This is the case of the 18-year-old who got kidnapped and her eyelids sewn open. Everyone who knew Samantha Koenig described her as a complete sweetheart. She had a big heart, loved animals, and had lots of friends. Samantha lived with her dad, James Koenig, in Anchorage, Alaska, and was in a relationship with a guy named Dwayne Tortolani. When this incident happened, Dwayne was supposed to pick Samantha up from work around 8 p.m., but when he got there, Samantha was nowhere to be found. Dwayne tried calling and texting her, but there was no answer, so he went over to her home to see if she was there. But to his shock, Samantha was not there either. Samantha's father was also getting concerned about his daughter, and together with Dwayne, they started calling all of Samantha's friends to see if any of them had information about Samantha's whereabouts, but no one knew anything. At that moment, a text message came for Dwayne. It was Samantha, and it read, "Hey, I'm spending a couple of days with friends. Let my dad know." Now that was strange because first, which friends was she talking about? Second, why was she not picking up her calls? And third, why couldn't she tell her dad directly? Something was definitely wrong in this situation. The two men were now getting desperate. They stayed up late calling and texting Samantha, but her phone went straight to voicemail. What was going on? At around 3 a.m., Dwayne was outside getting some fresh air when he noticed someone in a mask standing behind his truck, as if trying to break in. He yelled at the person and then ran back inside the house to get help from Samantha's father. By the time the two men came out, the person had disappeared, and he had taken the ATM card that Samantha shared with Dwayne. The next morning, Dwayne and James still had not heard from Samantha, so they went to the police to file a missing persons report. But while there, they were shocked to learn that Samantha's boss had reported a robbery at the coffee shop. The boss had found missing money from the cash register and had also received a text from Samantha saying that she was going away for a while. Could she have run off with the money? Everything seemed to point to this theory, but those who knew Samantha knew that she would not do something like that. Investigators decided to go through the surveillance footage to see if they could pick something up about what had happened that night, but what they found was completely terrifying. The footage showed Samantha busy working at the coffee shop with nothing out of the ordinary. Then, at about 5 minutes to 8, she's seen handing a coffee over to someone, but then suddenly backs away and puts her hands up. She then goes and turns off the light inside the shop, and then a fuzzy figure climbs in through the window. Now, because the footage was really dark and grainy, investigators could not tell who the person was, but they could tell that it was a man wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt and a baseball cap. When this mysterious person got inside the coffee shop, he tied Samantha's wrists with zip ties and then put a gun to her back and forcibly led her outside to his car before driving off. Samantha was not missing. She had been kidnapped. A search for Samantha immediately began, with her father calling on everyone in Anchorage to come in and help. The news of the kidnapping quickly spread, and soon her story was everywhere in the media. Friends, family, and even total strangers donated their money and resources to help in the search.
We've offered up use of our helicopters if one is needed to help the family out and to help the police department out.
The reward money for anyone with any information that would bring Samantha home continued to grow up to $60,000. The police and the FBI agents spent days and weeks following all the leads, but nothing really came of it. Then, on February 24th, 3 weeks after Samantha was abducted, Dwayne received a strange message from Samantha's phone that read, "Connor Park sign, under pic of Albert, ain't she purty?" The message was directing them to a particular place in the park where there was a memorial flyer of a dog named Albert. and Dwayne and James immediately notified the police before rushing to the place the kidnapper had mentioned. When they got there, they found a Ziploc bag, and inside of it was a typed ransom note and a picture taken from a Polaroid camera. The picture was that of Samantha. Her hair was braided, eyes opened, and she had a blank, expressionless look on her face. Beside her was a newspaper dated February 13th, 2012, proving that she was alive at least on that particular date. Although a week had already passed since, everyone wanted to believe that she was still alive and unharmed. In the ransom note, the kidnapper demanded $30,000 to be deposited into Samantha's bank account. He promised to release Samantha 6 months after he got the money. Investigators saw this as the perfect opportunity to capture the perpetrator in action as he went to withdraw the money. They asked Samantha's dad to deposit the money as the kidnapper demanded, and they made arrangements to get notifications of any withdrawals from Samantha's bank account. The first 3 withdrawals were made from 3 different ATMs in Anchorage, but every time the officers got there, the perpetrator had already vanished. The surveillance footage inside the ATMs showed a man wearing a ski mask and sunglasses making the withdrawals. Investigators tracked the perpetrator as he made other withdrawals in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. But he was always a few steps ahead of them, and they never really caught him in action, but he made a mistake. While leaving an ATM in Texas, the car he was driving, a white Ford Focus, was captured by surveillance cameras. The car was soon pulled over at a traffic stop where officers found dye-stained bills from a bank robbery, a ski mask, a gun, and Samantha's phone and ATM. The person driving the car was identified as 34-year-old Israel Keys. When Israel was arrested, he agreed to confess everything, but before he could begin his confession, he asked investigators to bring him a coffee from Starbucks, bagels, and cigarettes. When these items were brought to him, he opened up and gave a chilling account of how everything happened. Apparently, Israel had approached the Common Grounds coffee stand with the intention of robbing it, but when he saw Samantha, he immediately changed his mind and decided to kidnap her for ransom, only that he had no plans of letting her go. At some point when he was abducting her, Samantha managed to break away from him and tried to run away. But Israel chased her and tackled her to the ground before putting a gun to her body and threatening to pull the trigger if she didn't cooperate. He told her that he only wanted the ransom money and that he was going to let her go. When Samantha told him that her family didn't have money and that he wasn't going to get much for the ransom, Israel told her that it would not be a problem because he knew the public would contribute the money. At some point during the drive, Israel noticed that Samantha did not have her phone with her, which was necessary for his plan to ask for ransom. So he drove back to the coffee stand, left Samantha bound in his truck, and went to retrieve it. He then used the phone to text Samantha's boyfriend and her boss before removing the battery. After driving around town with Samantha bound in his truck, he pulled up to his house where he lived with his girlfriend and 10-year-old daughter. There, he tied Samantha up in a shed in front of the house, then turned the radio up so no one would hear her when she screamed. When he asked Samantha for her debit card, she told him that she shared a bank account with her boyfriend and that the ATM car was in his truck. Israel then made her give him directions to her house, where he went and was confronted by Dwayne as he was stealing the ATM card. When Israel returned to the shed later that night, he assaulted Samantha and ended her life by choking. He then left her body inside the shed and then went inside the house to his daughter and started packing for a pre-planned cruise that he was going on with his daughter. He left early that morning, February 2nd, and would not be back until February 17th. When he returned, he removed Samantha's body from the hiding place, applied makeup to her face, braided her hair, and get this, sewed her eyes open with a fishing line. He then posed her to appear like she was still alive before taking her picture that he sent to Samantha's family to extort money from them. And like that's not enough, he dismembered Samantha's body and threw the remains in a hole of a frozen lake. Now that was shocking, but it was nothing compared to what he was about to confess next. Apparently, Samantha was not even Israel's first victim, nor was she the second or the third. This guy was actually a serial killer who had gone undetected for years. He told detectives that he started killing in the late 1990s when he was still a teenager and had so far killed at least 7 people, though investigators believe that the number could be 11. He planned his murders long ahead of time and took extraordinary actions to avoid being detected.
If I go to a remote area that's not anywhere near where you live, that the other people go into as well.
Unlike other serial killers, Israel did not have a victim profile, saying that he chose his victims randomly. He usually killed far from home and never in the same place twice. On his murder trips, he kept his phone turned off and paid for items with cash. He also buried kill kits in different places, filled with everything he needed to commit a murder. He admitted to having these kits in Alaska, New York, Washington, Texas, Wyoming, and Arizona. Other than Samantha, Israel's other known victims were actually a couple in Essex, Vermont, named Bill and Lorraine Currier, who disappeared in June 2011. When asked by investigators why he committed his crimes, Israel simply replied, "Why not?" On December 2nd, 2012, while being held in jail, Israel ended his life by taking a sharp object to his wrists. He left behind a note which offered no clues about the identity of his other victims, but described them as pretty, captive butterflies. He also left chilling drawings of 11 skulls, which investigators believe represented the actual number of people that he had killed. What do you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and if you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe.